Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Klingberg Wing Mark II development. I'm Raul Klingberg, your host. Um, Been sitting here waiting on some good weather to go test flying. I thought it would be better if it wasn't 110 degrees at El Mirage when we go testing. I don't think I can endure that type of heat. So I thought I'd put together a video in the meantime that perhaps presents something that you might find useful or at least minimally entertaining. Um, of course, over time, my wing has experienced some damage and some road rash, and I thought it'd be interesting to show you how a repair is done on the wing skins, seeing how one of mine got damaged. And I put together a series of photos of that repair and a voiceover. I hope you find it useful, and if not, it's not very long. I haven't wasted too much of your time, but let's give it a go. So let's take a look at how to repair a hole in the wing skin.
Well, here we are looking at a nasty hole in my wing. This is an area that is just after the spar. The spar is delineated by that blue trim line there. The D-tube is forward, and we're looking at an aft skin, so it's the left wing. And you'll see that I've removed the covering from the damaged area so I can do this repair. And the covering was pretty easy to remove, been on there for a couple of years I think now. It's the Oracal 651, and it has given excellent performance, and it was easy to remove, so I like that. Makes the repair easy. Anyway, this hole was created in the strangest of ways. It's about the size of a quarter, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a $50, and it was created by a branch of a tree. What had happened was I was outside working on the wing, and I went off to get some tools, and I come back, and there is a old rotted chunk of branch from a pine tree had fallen out of the sky and just happened to orient itself perfectly vertical, and bam, went right through the wing skin. Now the wing skin here isn't overly strong, doesn't need to be. I'm just glad it didn't go through the D-tube. The wing skin in the aft area is 3/32 inch foam with some spread toe carbon fiber on one side and some Technora cloth on the other side. You can go look at earlier videos to get more details on that skin. So I have to proceed to fill this hole and do the repair such that the loads will be carried across the skins that are on the foam. Next up, you'll see that I've cut out a piece of scrap foam core material, and I've made it large enough to ensure that all damaged areas are removed. You have to work back from the damaged edge somewhat because the skins get rolled over and the foam gets crunched. So you got to remove all of the bad area and then a little bit more to be on the safe side. And then I've covered the hole with masking tape and placed the foam piece that I've pre-cut over the masking tape and drawn an outline of that foam core shape. And that's to ensure that I cut a hole that matches exactly with the foam core filler. You have to do it this way. You do it the other way around. If you cut the hole in the wing first and try to match foam to it, it gets extremely difficult as you try to hold the foam in place and on the inside and draw a line around it, then cut it accurately. This way works first time every time. Next, I removed the damaged area by carefully cutting along the line I traced with an X-Acto knife. Here I'm pointing out a flange that was underneath the wing skin. That is the flange at the top of the spar. It's an I-beam type spar, and I was careful not to remove that flange. It's a structural component. So I'm going to do the repair such that that flange gets incorporated in with the repair and the new wing skin to ensure that the loads are carried appropriately between the skins and the flange and the spar. I selected a piece of 1/64 inch thick plywood for this repair because it's nearly as strong as the entire wing skin itself. So it's excellent for this type of work. inexpensive, easy to work with. I've just with a dab, a little tiny dot of CA glue, I've attached a stick to it to form a handle so I can manage the piece of wood as I glue it to the inside of the wing skin. To get the plywood on the inside of the wing, it's necessary to tilt it and work on the diagonal, and the flexible nature of the plywood comes in handy at this point. You have to bend it a little bit in order to get it into the hole. Here I've applied a generous bead of 5-minute epoxy to the outside edge of the plywood. I have enough on there so that it'll squeeze out in both directions and provide sufficient bond area so that it's a good solid attachment. I quickly reinsert the patch into the hole and pull up on it, get it centered in place, and hold pressure on the part using the handle I attached earlier. I suppose you could rig up something mechanical to do this, but my hand's steady enough to hold it in place for 4 or 5 minutes. Before the epoxy cures all the way, it is critical to wipe away any excess that has oozed out and caused a bead to form between the original skin and the plywood. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult to put the foam patch in place. After the epoxy is cured, I remove the stick and clean up any remaining CA glue from the surface of the plywood. Next, I coat the plywood with a mixture of microballoons and 5-minute epoxy and spread it around. If there are any gaps between the plywood and the wing skin, I make sure that this epoxy mixture gets pressed into those gaps. Next, I firmly press the foam core material in place and wipe away any excess epoxy that squeezes up around the edges. After the epoxy is fully cured, I sand the edges of the repair area, and I cut out a patch of the same material that's going to go over the outside. You should have at least 1 inch plus a little overlap to make sure that there's enough bond surface. Next, I apply a generous coat of epoxy resin to the area, same resin that I used to make the panels originally, and prepare to apply the outer patch. I apply the outer patch with more resin, ensuring that the fabric is completely wetted out. The next day, to make sure that the epoxy is completely cured, I sand the surface gently and carefully, making sure to feather out the edges of the patch so that I don't have any lumps, and taking great care to not sand all the way through the patch. To complete the repair, I replace the covering material, the Orcal 651, making sure that there's plenty of overlap to have good adhesion. I found the Orcal in this case to be an excellent material for covering a aircraft like this. It has been good from beginning to end, and I've repaired painted surfaces before. This was much easier. Rather than sanding off the paint and worrying about getting good adhesion, you can just simply peel it away, clean the surface with some acetone or something like that, and you're good to start your repair. So been very impressed by the Orcal, and I would recommend it to anybody that's building an aircraft in a similar manner. So thanks for watching. I hope you were able to discover some new methodologies here, and maybe someday you'll have a chance to use them on your own projects. And if you do, let me know. That always gives me great pleasure to see that I'm helping out others. Thanks much, and as I always say, fly safe. Bye for now.